How we doing, guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is my new ninja PvE skill rotation for 269 Kudum that I'm currently using. Small caveat though, I'm actually still only 267 awakening AP. However, with the changes that have made to the PvE ninja kit, with some slight adjustments to my old rotations, I'm actually pulling the same numbers now as I used to pull when I had 275 and 277 AP using my old skill rotation. So it has proven to be very successful. And if you're interested to know what those numbers are, depending on the rotation, it fluctuates between 2.9 and 3.2 thousand trash. And I am convinced with more practice, I will be able to push that even higher, because I'm definitely still making mistakes as I'm also still trying to perfect the implementation of my new skill rotation. Now, before we get into the skill rotation itself, there are important buffs that you need to have on to be able to reach these types of numbers. So we're going to start with the food buffs. The first food buff you're going to be taking is Sylvia meal, mainly for the 150 extra HP that helps with survivability and the plus 5% back attack damage. Stamina for PvE isn't that important, but it's a perk. The second food being King of Jungle Hamburg, really that crit damage plus 5% does make a massive difference, so that's why you're using this meal. Ignore resistances, doesn't really matter in the PvE scenario. And finally, the Serendio meal, all AP plus 5 is nice, it's not too big. The accuracy plus 10 definitely helps, but really it's for that crit hit rate plus 1. Now, having 5 crit on your profile does make a difference on how much trash you get per hour. Now, I know a lot of ninjas are going to disagree with me, arguing the point that ninja has a lot of high crit percentage chance in a lot of his skills, and you are 100% right, but it does make a difference. If you don't want to take my word on it, Yellow even mentions this in one of the podcast style videos that he did about a month ago, where he starts talking about perfume spirit elixirs, which the reason he has to use perfume spirit elixirs, and the reason I'm not using it, is because they have droughts and we don't. So at this moment in time, I can get plus 5 crit without relying on the perfume that he relies on to get there. So hopefully that's enough to convince you guys that having plus 5 crit on the profile does make a difference. And now let's move on to the elixirs. So for the elixirs, I've broken it up into 2 categories. Your VIP, these are ones that you must have with you, and then your optional. So your VIP elixirs, now if you make your own elixirs, I strongly recommend just sticking with the higher grade blue versions of them. And I recommend sticking to party elixirs, because this really extends the amount of time they last for, making your elixir management a lot easier and making your grinds a lot more user-friendly. So for the first one, it's going to be Elixir of Endless Frenzy, giving you all AP plus 13, however, all DP minus 8. The second one's going to be Elixir of Lethal Assassination, giving you back attack damage plus 15%. Third one being Elixir Advanced Concentration, giving you all accuracy plus 12. And finally, Elixir of Strong Shock, giving you crit hit rate plus 3. Because remember, like I said, we need to get that 5 crit. Now, this will get you to 4 crit. The extra crit that I get is from a crystal that I put in my costume. If you want more information about that, I'll leave a link to a video down below that will tell you guys on how and what you need to do to get that crystal. Now for the optional elixirs, this is from the standpoint that maybe you do have the 269 Kudum bracket, but your DP is a bit lackluster and taking too much damage. So you can swap out Elixir of Frenzy with the Fury, so you don't get the DP debuff, but you get obviously slightly less AP because of that. Then you can have Elixir of Draining for plus 3 HP on critical hits. Now, for these 3 optional ones underneath the Endless Fury, greens are just fine. If you are having survivability issues even with the first 2 elixirs, at that point think about using Grim Reaper Elixir and Elixir of Will. But this is a lot of elixir management if you do have to get this far, so maybe it'd be worth sticking in Archmans if you don't want to do that every 10 to 15 minutes. Now for the skill add-ons, our Awakening skill add-ons, Murderous Intent, we've got the Monster AP plus 25 and the Accuracy plus 4%. Seamless, we've got the crit hit rate plus 20% and attack speed plus 10%. Katana Shower, we have the Evasion plus 4% and the Tick Bleeding damage of 50. Now into the pre-awakening, Blade Spin, we've got the Monster AP of 30 with the accuracy of 5%. Now Ankle Cutter and Beheading of the Dead, these are the skill add-ons I had during my testing. So that's crit hit rate plus 20%, attack speed plus 7%, and for beheading it's crit hit rate plus 30% and poison damage of 56. So the reason that I've mentioned that these are skill add-ons I had during the test, because I'm pretty sure these are not really helping me get any extra trash. The reason being, with this new skill rotation, my Seamless buff gets reapplied right at the end of my Awakening rotation, which then allows the buff to linger for the pre-Awakening moves. And the skill add-ons do not stack, so you don't get an extra 40% crit hit rate by stacking a Seamless skill add-on buff with an Ankle Cutter skill add-on buff. It doesn't work like that. It only reapplies the buff for 9 seconds. So I honestly don't know how useful the Ankle Cutter would be. It could definitely be changed for something maybe a bit more PvP orientated if there isn't better PvE skill add-ons to put in its place. And Beheading of the Dead is an opener skill I use in very specific mobs, in very specific rotations to group them up properly, so it doesn't really give me consistent benefits in terms of trash. So maybe again, a different skill with different add-ons, or just diverting it to PvP add-ons would be more efficient in these two situations. But the other 4 skills, these are definitely the skill add-ons you want to use. Now, getting into the skill rotation itself, I'll be using this visual aid to help me out here and go through it verbally. I'll be interjecting some points that I need to make where I've put in some skills, and then after I'll show you what it looks like in-game as well. So we're going to start off with Murderous and Seamless to apply a little bit of damage, but mainly to self-buff us. We'll then be using Katana Shower to put a DP debuff on the mobs, and also the skill add-ons rebuffing ourselves as well. And for the next icon, I've got Block Jump. Now, Block Jump is what's going to be used in most scenarios, but here you just basically need to get behind the mobs. Another method is using Ninja Step. If they're a bit too spread out, Block Jump won't work. Ninja Step is a better option. However, the best option, the most efficient option, is raising your sword by pressing right trigger in Awakening. That'll put you in transition stance, and then using Silent Charge to get behind the mobs. When you do this, you can then actually reapply Murderous Intent, because it's more effective when you're in the transition stance and it's a faster animation. So it does help with the clear speed just a touch, but I wouldn't usually use Murderous Intent if I don't do the Silent Charge method to get behind the mobs, because it's a little bit slower and just the damage is not that much. It doesn't make too much of a difference. But that's just a little caveat in this position. You can just go straight from Block Jump to get behind the mobs to keep it simple, and then do a Serpent Ascension. And during the animation, hold right bumper. This will now allow us to flow into execution. And after the execution, we're going to go into a Vacuum Slash. And when you hit the opponent with the 3rd hit of Vacuum Slash, then hold A to cancel the end animation, and also reapply your buffs with Seamless with a little bit of extra damage on top. We will then go into the pre-awakening by using Blade Spin. After Blade Spin, we'll hit them with Ankle Cutter. After Ankle Cutter, we'll hit them with Malice. After Malice, we'll hit them with Shuriken Flight. And Shuriken Flight is a cancel for Shadow Stomp, so you can use the animation of Shuriken Flight, and if you, as you're holding back and you let go of left bumper, if you press X at the correct time and hold it just for a second, you will then go into the cancel animation of Ninja Stomp. As you're doing the Ninja Stomp animation, make sure you hold A to do the flow, and at this point the mobs should be dead. But sometimes if you didn't get the correct amount of back attacks during your skills, a Vodkin or an Elton could be left alive. So this is where I've put in filler. Depending if there's 1 or 2 mobs, depending on what skills you have off cooldown, will depend on what you will use in this position. A simple skill to use would be Illusion Restraint. Big AoE, lots of damage, kills them every time. However, obviously if it's on cooldown, the next best thing is using a Shadow Slash into Heart Aiming. And if for some reason it's still alive, you can go into the Fatal Blow and the Flow just after that. That point, they should all definitely be dead, and you'll move on to the next mob. So in the clip that I'm about to show you, I've slowed it down just so we can really go through the skills and show you how effective it can be when done properly. Now, as you can see in this clip, when I've got myself positioned, I use the Murderous and Seamless to get my buffs on and do a little bit of damage. We're going into Katana Shower, again for debuffs and buffs, and obviously good damage from Katana Shower. Now, I reposition myself here using the Silent Charge with the transition stance, and that allows me to do the extra damage Murderous Intent with the faster animation, which goes into the Ascension and goes into the flow execution, which we will then follow up with the Vacuum Slash, cancelling the 3rd hit animation after the hit animation, and the damage goes off into Seamless, which then gets followed up with the Blade Spin Ankle Cutter and the Shuriken Malice into the Shuriken Flight, which we use to use the cancel animation of Stomp Clone. And as you can see, all the mobs died. The Kalkisha that lived is actually from the next pack that always gets aggroed to that pack when you do this rotation. That's just normal. But if I did want to kill him and I didn't want to bring him to the next pack, I would be using the skills that I mentioned, either Illusion Restraint or a Fatal Blow. I could even use Moonlight or even Ninja Shackles if I wanted to finish off that mob. But at the HP that I had, I would want to make sure to get behind it to make sure that the final hit does kill it. Now, one last tip I'd like to give you guys, there are certain packs in Hystria that have a bit of a wait time to group the mobs. In those situations, buff yourself with Murderous Seamless and go into Shura KO Spree with the Flow Execution. So as you wait, you're applying some extra damage and then go back into the pre-mentioned skill set. And that way you're keeping yourself safe, you're doing some regen that help you group the mobs, and then you can quickly take care of them when they're in the right position for you to do so. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you like the new way I'm doing my guides. This is from some justified feedback that I've gotten in the past from some of my old guides. So I'm trying to use some more visual aids and some other bits and bobs to help it out. If you've got any more suggestions, just leave them down in the comment section below. And as always, I'll catch you guys in the next video.